So, is what is really going on here that gun control really isn't about better rules? It's really about getting rid of the Second Amendment altogether. Do you believe that? Well, a lot of people do. President Trump declared in a tweet that the Second Amendment will never be repealed, as much as Democrats would like to see this happen. The president is responding to someone who isn't a Democrat, a former Supreme Court Justice, John Paul Stevens, who was actually appointed by a Republican, President Reagan. But he did put out an op-ed saying that he thinks that repealing the Second Amendment would be the fastest way to legal change. And other people have echoed this sentiment as well. But is it real, or is it a distraction from bringing people together to answer the fundamental question of how do we stop these shootings? Joining us now is the founder and president of the United States Concealed Carry Association, Tim Schmidt. Tim, welcome to the show. Thank you for being part of this conversation. And I hope we can keep having you on because we need to have all sides represented to keep pushing for changes that will keep people more safe. So thank you.
Hey, well, thank you for the warm welcome. And I look forward to being a part of this conversation because you're right. We do need to continue to talk and figure this out.
So I wanted to start with this idea of what we don't believe, okay? Everybody wants there to be less violence, less gun violence, less shootings. I mean, I'm right about that, right?
Of course, yes. We all want that. We all want safety and security for our families. And this isn't a Republican and Democrat issue. We all want that.
You know, and in fair, when I was vetting your organization, you know, just to make sure what we were getting, because it's so, you get blown away just by your membership. You know, you got a huge membership. But you have people from both parties and all different kinds of stripes in there. So the idea of it's just one way or the other, you don't represent that as an organization, so I wanted you here. The reason I'm seizing on this Second Amendment thing, have there been op-eds about it? Yes. Are there people who want to repeal the Second Amendment? Yes. But is that a main thrust of what is being proposed anywhere in Congress? I don't see it, and I feel that it's being used as a device to keep people apart. And if you do that, we're never going to get any better solutions.
Yeah, that's a great point, and certainly you don't hear a lot about that. But I got to be honest, when a former Supreme Court justice writes an op-ed that actually talks about that very thing, that's pretty scary. Because if you look back at history, world history, I mean, gun control starts and eventually it turns into gun confiscation. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen in the United States, but it's a possibility, and it makes people nervous. So
right. So I think the second part, Tim, is what seizes on me. Like if you had the list, you know, hey, here's what we want to worry about. Here's the kinds of laws we're concerned about. You know, that would be very low on your list as a possibility, right? Because one, we have the political impractical nature of it, all right? There's a reason that the Constitution has been changed so few times. You know, the last time we did it was really about prohibition, right? You need 2/3 of both houses of Congress. You need to have 38 of the states' legislatures say they're going to. It's just not going to happen. But if you bring it up, it does scare people. It makes them nervous. And when you're scared and nervous, you're less willing to reach across to the other side. Fair concern?
Exactly correct. And you're less willing to talk about what's really going to make a change and what's really going to make an effect. And unfortunately, so many of the laws that are getting proposed, you know, increasing gun control, changing the age at which you can buy a gun, I mean, these are all feel-good laws that are completely delusional. They're going to do very, very little. I mean, what we have here in this country, we have a problem with society. We have a societal problem, and we have to address that. We can't think that by just passing more laws, it's going to all of a sudden make criminals follow the laws that we currently have. So we've got a long way to go with this issue. But I think you're right. You know, being overly scared with op-eds about repealing the Second Amendment does not help at all.
Yeah, it just keeps people across. All I was dealing with yesterday, you know, once the president echoed it, they're like, oh, see, there it is. Schumer came out and said, this is not what we want. You even had one of the Parkland kids come forward and say, this is not what we want. And that's been another device. I got to tell you, I was surprised and saddened that people go after these kids. They're just kids who survived a mass shooting. They have strong feelings. You can disagree with them. They can be wrong in terms of what they want. But I've never seen people demonize kids like this that just lived through this. Do you endorse what they've been doing to these kids?
No, of course not. I feel like these kids have been used as pawns on really both sides. I mean, I mean, you're right. They're young kids, some of them 13, 14, 15 years old, and of course they're going to have something to say because they just survived an unbelievably traumatic event. But to shove them in front of the camera, to put them on TV, I think that's a disservice.
Well,
to
look,
the
if they
kids,
want to
their
be there,
families,
you and I divide on that. If they want to be there, they've earned the right, the hard way, to be there. A lot of them are voting age. They want to vote on this. They need to, because let's be honest, politicians on this issue, they're not acting out of conscience. They're acting out of consequence. The NRA has money, but it's barely a top 10 lobbying firm in terms of dollars. It's votes that they get out there. People vote on this issue when they're gun advocates. And if people want different laws, they're going to have to vote on that intention. And until they do, we'll have status quo. So let's make a quick shift. It's just our first conversation. We'll have plenty, I hope. But in terms of what's on the table that you're okay and not okay with. So we have societal issues. We'll have to see how we deal with those. Hardening targets of schools, that's on the table. Fair point. But to have it on there to the exclusion of a discussion about access, meaning who gets weapons and under what circumstances, 90+% of this country, left and right, it's an unheard of number, say we need to have better controls on who gets weapons. Do you agree?
So if in a perfect world, if we could actually make laws that would have an effect on criminals getting or not getting weapons, sure, that would make a lot of sense. But the fact of the matter is that you can pass as many laws as you want. You can say that you can't get a gun until you're 25, 35, or 50. It's not going to have any effect on psychopaths, on criminals getting guns. There's 300 million guns in the United States.
If you want to get a gun illegally, you can. It's not that easy. It's not as easy as people think. I've actually done it before journalistically to see how easily you got to know certain kinds of people. But let's assume you can. Our problem is these mass shooters. I'm not talking about overall gun violence and what we see in urban settings and in impoverished settings. That's a bigger problem. It's more complex. These guys almost always get their guns legally. And that is something you could control. Red flag laws would make a difference. Waiting periods might make a difference. Universal background checks might make a difference because people find easier routes of access when they can. But we can't even get universal background checks done, and I don't understand that. Why?
Well, part of the problem is that the federal government has a challenge with getting really anything done effectively. I mean, look.
But you guys resist it, Tim. On your side of the ball, you say leave the gun shows out of it.
Okay, so here's why this is important. Because, sure, I mean, you can attempt to pass all of these laws that are going to make it more, quote unquote, potentially more difficult for criminals to get the gun. But in the same effect, what you're doing is you're making it more difficult for good guys to get the guns as well. And guns are used roughly 10 to 12 times more often every year to stop crimes, to stop murders, to stop rapes, than they are for mass killings.
Right, but a lot of that statistic goes to guns in the hands of police. But I take your point. This is just an initial conversation. It was a good one. It's good to have you on here. You guys have to be part of this conversation, and you will be going forward. Tim, I look forward to seeing you again soon once we get some more meat on the bones of where lawmakers are in terms of what they'll even consider.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Have a great Easter. Allison.
Take care.